That's terrible. Oh, thank you. I say that's terrible. You raise your hands and try harder. That was more than enough. Trust me. Thank you. Thanks everybody. How are we all doing today? All right. Oh, come on now. I'm quite interactive in the way I talk, so it helps to give it back. Otherwise, it's going to be like Christmas with my parents, full of awkward silences. Try and give me a bit of feedback if you can. That'd be lovely. You were here last time I spoke. Look at that. There's a memory. Welcome back, sir. I've obviously got a fan. Hi everybody. My name's Simon. So I'm a marketer, which you can always tell a marketer because they've either got far too much hair or they're going for the Bezos thing and they don't have enough. Personally, I'm trying to desperately reclaim my youth, although I'm standing on a catwalk, we don't need to talk about my disastrous fashion choices through the years. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit today about what's going on in marketing. I myself have been in marketing for about 25 years. I've worked with and consulted for a lot of businesses out there. Many of you know Citibank, Vodafone, Google, companies like that, to help them with a wide range of marketing challenges. I'm also the CEO of a strategic marketing agency, so I help companies around the world with lots of different challenges, from growth to brand development, launching a new business, advertising, research, you name it. And I'm also the author of a couple of books everything's in the wrong pocket, on marketing, one of which is used by many universities around the world to teach digital marketing as well. They're books. Here are some books. We won't talk too much about the books today, but don't forget to go and buy lots of copies of the books. But more importantly today, we're going to talk a little bit about trends. So how many of you guys are working in marketing or sort of running a small business and therefore heavily involved in marketing? Lots. Don't be too timid. Go on, get it right up there. I can't see. Lots of you. That's probably good. You're probably in the right place then. Good. So there's a lot happening this year, is really the key thing to say in marketing. There are some big changes right now. With the onset of Web3, we're moving really from Web2 to Web3 right now, and that's causing a significant change to how businesses need to operate within marketing. And it's a very exciting time, but it's a time when you really need to have your finger on the pulse as we go through the next 12 months. Things are already rapidly changing and very different as we stand here in February to even what they were back in November, December last year. There's some big changes that have happened in the industry, some of which you guys may already be on top of, some of which you might be dipping your toe into, some of which you might not know too much about at the moment. But these are the ones we're going to talk about here. I release through my business a digital marketing trends report every January. So the most recent one came out last month, if you want to pick it up on the website. But we're going to talk through a lot of this now anyway. So the key things, privacy versus experience. There is a lot going on in that space, and this year is a really critical year. The regulation around privacy, we'll talk about this in a moment, but the regulation around privacy is getting hotter all the time, whilst consumers are expecting a more personalized experience all the time. And those two things really clash with each other. So it's really critical to have a strategy around dealing with that over the course of the next year, especially in the retail space. Web 3.0 as well, as I say, we're moving from 2 sort of through 2.5 into Web 3 at the moment. So we'll talk about what that means. There's loads of sort of buzzwords and trends and things going on in that space at the moment, some of which are important to understand, some of which we shouldn't get too carried away with, but we'll talk about what that means and what you should be doing today. I'm hoping to give you as many practical tips out of this as I can, so this isn't just a bunch of theoretical waffle. There's actually hopefully things you can take away, and if you haven't got enough, come and interrogate me at the end, and I'll give you some more. We're going to talk a little bit about artificial intelligence. That is one of the things that's moving very quickly. Is anyone here using any AI in their business right now? One. Anyone else? Okay, good. We definitely need to talk about that then. It's going to be a good one, so we'll have a great conversation there. The metaverse as well. Anyone doing anything on the metaverse in their business at the moment? One, again. Okay, brilliant. That's more representative of society. So 1 in 100 is probably about right for the metaverse. That's great. 1 in 100 for AI. We've got some catching up to do there. We're going to talk about content, which is always important in marketing, has been for a very long time now. But again, there's a lot changing in that field. We need to keep up with that. We'll talk about what to focus on this year there. We're going to look at social media as well, ever evolving, lots of change. has anyone here heard of Elon Musk? No one? No one's heard of Elon Musk. I know you all have. That's okay. That wasn't a real question. So obviously, him buying Twitter and lots of things going on with TikTok and there's loads of big trends around social media that we need to cover off. We talk about analytics, not perhaps the most glamorous area of marketing, but a really, really important one to touch on this year. You probably all know, I would hope, or many of you will know what I'm going to say there. If you don't, this will hopefully open your eyes up to something very, very important for you to do in the next 4 months. We're going to talk about Gen Z. We've got a few Gen Zs here. I'm a generation apart from that, Gen X. I've skipped the millennials, so I'm a lot older than you Gen Zs, but I know there's a few of you in amongst the audience here. There's a lot changing with regards to what marketers and brands need to be doing to work with Gen Z and really get them on board. So we'll talk a little bit about that. And finally, SEO, search engine optimization. Again, ever evolving, always has been for 25 years, but let's talk about the trends that matter now. And what we're going to be doing, what practical things you can be doing even to take us through. Does that sound all right? Okay, good. It's too late to change it, so I hope it's all right. Good. Okay, so let's talk a bit about privacy. I'm sure many of you will be aware there are constantly data hacks happening for businesses, and it's really, really eroding trust. If we look at 10 examples of data hacks that have happened in the last 10 years, we've actually we've had 7.5 billion records just from those 10 hacks alone exposed out to the public from these 10 companies, right? That's just in 10 years, and that's just 10 examples. There are hundreds and hundreds of examples every single year. So every time one of these happens, that's basically the world's population of data, right? It's been hacked into and released out there. Every time that happens, of course, our trust, we may be businesses, but we're also consumers, every single one of us, of course, our trust is eroded even in brands. That's causing a lot of problems. And over the years, regulation has therefore come into place. I'm sure most of you have heard of GDPR over here in Europe. There are also some big changes everywhere else in the world. The CPA is the Californian Privacy Act over in the US. Some countries are more focused on privacy, some on less, but there's an awful lot of regulation, and we as marketers need to adapt to that regulation very, very quickly, because ultimately there's a lot changing now. One of those things that's changing is the browsers blocking third-party cookies. Now, that's already happened with a lot of browsers, but it's not happened with Chrome just yet. Google Chrome, being the biggest browser out there by a distance, has not actually blocked third-party cookies yet. That's coming, and it's coming very, very soon. But that causes a big restriction on what we as marketers can do. So from an advertising perspective, where we've been able to push our adverts out, follow people around the internet, look at what they're doing and hit them with remarketing ads, we're no longer able to do that. We're no longer able to use our advertising to follow people around and push those conversions. We're going to have to make sure that everything we do as marketers is on from a first-party data perspective. So we need first-party cookies. So that's a challenge, a big one. And I think one thing that everyone needs to be doing this year is thinking about what their first-party data strategy is. What does that really mean? Well, it means ultimately cooking people when they come through to your properties, the properties you own. So your website, your app, any property that belongs to you where you can collect that data. It's absolutely critical now that you are collecting that data. You're encouraging people to log in. You're giving them experiences that matter to them. And if you can use platforms like customer data platforms to pull those data signals together, understand where people are coming from, what they're resonating with, what's working for them on social media, what content's working, and then feed that into building advertising strategies, content, social media strategies that deliver that out to them, you're able to build a much stronger relationship. You're going to get in front of fewer people, but you're going to have a much stronger resonance with those people you get in front of. So a first-party data strategy can be a little bit complicated to get into if you haven't touched on this yet, but it's absolutely critical that this year you build a first-party data strategy that collects data on your platforms and uses that data effectively to get in front of those people, to build experiences, to create that loyalty, to create that conversion. If you have any challenges in that, because it's a long, complicated piece, and you want to chat to me afterwards, come and have a chat, and I can give you some ideas and thoughts. But it's really critical. On the flip side, consumers are expecting increasingly a personalized experience. So where we're saying we can't use third-party cookies to personalize, the consumers are still saying, well, actually 66%, I think is the latest number, of consumers or customers expect their brand to treat them and know them inside out. They absolutely know exactly who they are and what to deliver to them at any time. And outside of customers, consumers are expecting 52%. 52% of consumers expect every offer they get to be personalized. So on one side, we're saying we can't use third-party cookies to understand you, but on the other side, consumers are saying you have to absolutely understand me. So that's why the first-party data strategy is so critical, to really understand our consumers, deliver the personalized experiences they expect, but not be too intrusive. And we've all seen those ads following us around the internet, right? When you've been to a website for the next 3 months, you get buy this, buy this, buy this. That's all going away, ultimately, through this strategy. So yeah, that's really, really critical that we create value exchanges, and what we're taking from the end consumer is in exchange for giving them some value, some experience back. Does that make sense? Yeah, there's a lot to unpick in that, so come and talk to me afterwards if you want to chat it through. Web 3.0, can anyone define Web 3.0? Has anyone got a loud voice and wants to have a go at it? Or is no one feeling brave on a Tuesday afternoon? Okay, cool, I don't blame you. So look, we're in my mind, we're currently in Web 2.5. Web 1 was back at the beginning, early days of the internet. People published basically brochures online that you could go and read. It's pretty much what it was. Web 2 is when we got social media, the ability to engage, comment, have sort of two-way communications, communities. Web 3 is really where we're moving into a decentralized web, where AI will play a major part, blockchain will play a major part, NFTs, that's a debatable one, but will probably play a major part. Anyone own any NFTs? No one bought one of the Donald Trump ones when they came out? Really? Fair enough. So there's a lot in terms of the underlying architecture and infrastructure of web that's going to change, but also the experience. So this becomes about truly immersive experiences. There are billions of devices out there now that we're connected to. I'm sure many of you have got Echoes in your homes or Google Home and lots of other at-home IoT devices. There are 16 billion of them in the world connected at the moment. But AI, as I say, is a critical one. We're going to talk specifically about AI next, and then we're going to go on to the specifically talking about the metaverse after that. But ultimately, we're moving into a place where the web becomes owned by all of us. At the moment, the web is owned through centralization, through organizations like Google and Amazon and Apple, where in order to use elements of the web, you have to go to one of their devices, or your website has to be hosted on one of their servers. All that data out there is ultimately owned by a small number of very large organizations. Now, the Web 3.0 is about decentralizing that, data moving across multiple platforms, existing in multiple places at the same time. So these large organizations, they can't set the rule. They can't own what we're doing. It's ultimately owned by society. And the creators that are out there today, which is, well, it can be potentially any of us, we're able to create anything, host that, manage it, and get people involved in it, engaged in it in a decentralized approach, which creates an environment that is truly immersive, and it has laws that we can create and we can bind ourselves. It's an absolutely fascinating journey. We're not going to get there this year. The key message on the metaverse is, and this sort of Web 3.0 is, this is not happening in 2023. The reason we're talking about it in a trends for 2023 presentation is because it's important for everyone in this room to understand the principle of it and take some small steps into just understanding it, perhaps testing it out. And as I say, we'll get onto that in a little bit of time as well. So I think that the exciting thing is setting new standards. We won't have governments, we won't have corporations setting the rules by which we need to live. And that gives us the chance to create safe environments and remove a lot of the issues that we see through competing governments and political lines around the internet at the moment. For example, the privacy piece we've just talked about significantly decreases as in terms of competing regulations once we're in a decentralized economy. So it's a fascinating area. Again, if you want to have a chat about it, I'd love to have a chat with you afterwards as well. Okay, so let's get into AI. Let's do one more. I keep doing hands up. Just tell me if you're getting bored of this, but it's nice just to make sure people are awake. In terms of ChatGPT, has anyone heard of that? Yeah, okay, all right. So ChatGPT is an AI platform owned by OpenAI. It's got a lot of coverage over the last 3 months, a lot of hype. Effectively, on ChatGPT, you can go onto the platform and you can effectively ask it questions, set it challenges, and it will go out and come back to you with a sort of artificial intelligence response to that. So effectively, a great example is in SEO, search engine optimization. You can go in there and you can say, hey, look, I want the top 1,000 keywords for my company, which does this. And boom, it just gives them to you. It does all the research, gives you the answer straight away. Okay, great, huge amount of research done. You can say, write me an essay on why Alexander the Great was better than Julius Caesar, right? And it will give you actually a pretty good response on that, right? A pretty good view with some great research in there. There is the opportunity, of course, for students to abuse this, which is a problem that we need to overcome. There is, on the flip side, an opportunity for us as marketers to use AI to write our content for us. We're going to come on to content, but content is huge. The amount of content now that is needed in marketing, if you can use an AI tool to go and write that for you, the amount of work and effort saved in that is enormous. However, the quality at the moment is debatable, right? And there are tools that already exist, including Google's own tools and others, that spot content that's written by AI and basically says that's not high-value content, that's been written by AI. There are some tools that are better at getting around those checks and challenges, but at the moment, I wouldn't recommend any of you go out and start doing all of your blogs with AI, but we're getting there. You can certainly test it, you can certainly play with it, you can set it challenges, you can get it to write strategies for you. You say, look, I've got this problem within my business, what's a good strategy to overcome it? And it will pull all that together for you. Maybe a little bit of plagiarism, maybe a little feeding from other places, but at the moment, there's a real power in using tools like ChatGPT. This is just one of them. It's just got a lot of coverage over the last few months. And it's one I'd recommend all of you go and have a look at. OpenAI is, you can use a few queries on it for free. So go and have a play with it. Don't be nervous about AI. You have to embrace AI this year. That is the one thing I will say to all of you. Go and play with it. It doesn't matter if you're a technophobe or whatever else. It doesn't matter. Go out there, try out some AI tools. Jasper is another one. I think it's probably my key takeaway there. Yeah, go and have a go. I think that's it. Just go and have a go. Go and play with ChatGPT. Go and play with Jasper. Search for AI tools, see what you can find. Now, you can see up on the screen here, there's a lot of use cases. This is not just for ChatGPT. There are hundreds and hundreds of AI tools out there at the moment. If you look at these use cases for research, right? And so, rather than going out and paying thousands of pounds to a research company like mine, this is a stupid bit of advice. Why am I doing this? But you can use these AI tools to specifically do research for you, right? You can use them to plan. You can use them for copywriting. We talked about. You can use AI to create images for you from nothing, right? You can give it a brief and it can create an image. Many, many examples. Even public speaking, something I probably should have done. There is an AI tool where you can record your speech to it and it will come back and give you notes about what you should have done and shouldn't have done, should have said, should have looked like, how you should have moved afterwards, which is incredibly valuable for people like me who wander aimlessly around the stage. But also, if you've written something in text, you can get the AI to write the copy, then you can get the copy turned into a video. Automatically, you can just turn that, create that video, pull the images in, create the video, have the copy along the bottom of it as well, the captions. So it's enormously powerful. What you can do with this at the moment, right now as we stand today, is enormously powerful in terms of time saving. If you're a small business and you're just thinking, I can't hire all these copywriters, I can't afford to create all these videos, I haven't got time to do all this research. Well, do you know what? That's great, because there's tools that can do that for you, either for free or for minimal cost. So I would strongly recommend all of you, if you've got problems, go and see if there's an AI tool that can solve it for you. If you want some recommendations on names of those tools, come and grab me afterwards, and I'll give you a pointer into the direction. Every single one of those, I can give you a tool that does that. So yeah, embrace it. Please, please, please embrace AI. This is going to be big. This is already big. It's going to get bigger. I've put Microsoft versus Google there. This is an interesting point in that Google obviously is a search engine. This might sound controversial, but Google in reality is a little bit outdated, right? It's incredibly powerful. It's amazing what it's done over the last 30 years. But if you think about it, going to a device in 2023, going to a device and saying, I want to find out the answer to this, and getting a big text page of various links that you've got to click in and out of to see which one's just advertising at you and which one's waffling, and you're trying to find the answer. That's not really where we should be now. Yeah, it's incredible 20 years ago, but now that feels a bit dated, really, if we think about it. If you could go to that machine and say, hey, I've got this question, and it comes back with, hey, look, we've done all the work, we've looked at it, we've validated the answer, here you go, this is the one answer you need to know. Boom, what's the point of Google anymore? Well, that's an interesting question, right? If Google doesn't exist, what happens to the internet, right? The internet doesn't go down or anything, but Google still earns the vast majority of its money from the ads on its search engine, the vast majority, and that funds most of what they do as a business. So if Google gets killed by AI because it's not moved fast enough, then do we still have Google Maps? Do we still have Gmail? I mean, there are hundreds, thousands of platforms out there that are being run by Google that are effectively being bankrolled by the ads section. So there's a huge question there. Now, the reason it's Microsoft versus Google is because Microsoft are working on buying OpenAI, who own ChatGPT, which is by far the biggest and most aware sort of brand awareness piece that we have. So there is a huge challenge there. If Microsoft do go and buy ChatGPT and they do a phenomenal job and they place it really well within Bing and start to destroy old-fashioned search, I don't know, search 1.0, let's call it, and we move into search 2.0 where it's AI-based, do we see a fundamental shift with how the internet actually works and the services we use over the next 10 years? I don't know, but if we're running small businesses, big businesses, or working in marketing departments, or whatever it might be, we should be looking at that and thinking about what our strategy is for if this happens over the next few years. So that's my advice to you there. Have a think about what that in reality means. So yeah, embrace it. Get involved. I'm going to try and play a video. It may play. It may not play, because I know the internet here is not very good. It doesn't matter if it doesn't play. We'll just move on. But I'm going to give it a go. It's always good to forewarn. Let's see. Oh, there's a mouse. There's a little cursor on the screen. Is that? Nope. Move on. Click, click, click. Okay, good. Did you enjoy that video? Yeah, that really broke up the talking, didn't it? Yeah. Oh, the best plans. That was a little video about the metaverse. Maybe if you're interested, I can send you a link. There's lots of videos about the metaverse. But that's what we're going to talk about now. Okay, this is an important question, actually, for the metaverse. Who in this room is into gaming, sort of computer gaming, console gaming, that sort of thing? Give me a hand up. Don't be ashamed. It's okay. No one. That's a lie. Why are you all being embarrassed? Okay, who here hates gaming and thinks it's terrible and shocking? Right, all of you, change your minds quickly, right? It's absolutely fine to hate gaming, right? It's totally fine not to be into gaming. However, it is really, really important to understand it as we go into the metaverse, because ultimately the metaverse is created off the back of gaming, really, if we're in reality. So you don't need to become a gamer. You don't need to start playing online games. That's absolutely not what you need to do. You don't suddenly need to go and become an OG, I think my kids call it on Fortnite. You can't be, it's too late. But anyway, whatever, you don't need to worry about that. But you do need to understand the principles of it. That's the key thing, right? Which comes along the lines of what marketers have been talking around gamification for a long time, but very, very different. So the reason I'm talking about gaming is because ultimately the first steps into the metaverse exist today in the form of Fortnite. I'm sure many of you have heard of Fortnite, Minecraft, Roblox, Microsoft Flight Simulator. There's something called Truck Simulator as well. They're big environments that are ultimately landscapes you can step within, where other people are in there and you can interact with them. Environments are being rendered. They might be changing in real time. You can move between worlds. Within Fortnite, for example, you can go into what's called creative mode. You effectively step into a lobby, and from there you can step into different worlds. They're all within the Fortnite environment, of course, but within them, you look different. You're playing a different game. There's perhaps different physics models coming out as well within that. So these are worlds, ultimately. These are ultimately worlds that you can step and you can move between. So what we're talking about with the metaverse is worlds within worlds, being able to create experiences. Now, we as businesses, that might all sound silly and crazy and futuristic, but so did the internet 40 years ago. So there's a lot that when you look into the future, you think that seems nuts. We're all going to be walking around with these huge headsets or something. Not necessarily the case, by the way. The headset piece isn't actually critical to the metaverse. It might seem like it is because that's what we're being sold by Facebook, etc., but it's not actually critical. And the adoption at the moment of VR headsets is still very, very low. I mean, we're nowhere near a sort of penetration where anyone's really going to be able to take part in the metaverse. But the opportunity here to create experiences for brands is enormous. If you can think about creating a world for your brand, as many people do if they have servers on Discord or communities on your website or groups on LinkedIn, they're ultimately mini versions of this. If we can create worlds for your brand where people can step in and have experiences, they can move around, and maybe you can even combine that virtual experience with a physical experience. So, for example, could you step into I'm going to say a brand, Pizza Express. Could you step into a Pizza Express world where you can go and have pizza on the edge of Niagara Falls, but in reality, you order that pizza in real life, and so does a friend of yours that lives on the opposite side of the world. Both your pizzas arrive at your house, you go into the metaverse, you eat them. You're actually physically eating the pizza while sitting with your friend at Niagara Falls. A phenomenal way to enjoy a product. The ways you can do this, the ways you can bring your brand to life and these experiences to life is incredible. Now, as I say, this is not happening this year. There's lots of reasons this isn't happening this year. One of those, as I say, most people don't own the VR headsets you'd need to really bring that to life. But also, the actual underlying infrastructure of the internet is not ready. We don't have the technology to be fast enough to deliver these sort of experiences and to synchronize people doing things in real time. Even though we have fiber optic cables, which in theory move the data at light speed, they don't actually go in a straight line from one place to another. They have to weave around political borders and undersea volcanoes and all kinds of things. So there is a speed gap. There are issues with a synchronicity within the machines we're using, the servers that we're relying on, the location of the data. If someone is in an environment that's being hosted in Washington and they live in Washington, whereas the next person is in the same environment at the same time with them, but they live in Iran, then they're not going to sync quite the same way. And we're just not at the point from an underlying technology infrastructure perspective at the moment where we can even deliver the metaverse anyway. But that doesn't stop us making inroads in. Right? As I say on here, there's been $3 billion of investment in Fortnite alone, purely on the basis of their focus on delivering a metaverse vision. Right? So this is something that we need to take seriously. It is going to happen. Maybe not in this weird and wonderful world of VR headsets and I don't know, what are all the old films? There's so many films, right, where they've got their headsets on and they're on virtual bikes and the Minority Report and all that sort of, I don't know. We're not necessarily going to go there, but we are going to move into a world where these brand experiences that we can create, that people can be within, are going to come to life. And it's absolutely critical that every business thinks about what that journey is going to be over the next 5 or 10 years and maybe just test and learn and try over the short term. Does anyone feel inspired by trying to do something with their business off the back of that? Go on, someone put your hand up. Good man, excellent, thank you. Good, I've inspired one person. Job done. All right. Okay, so content. Let's talk a little bit about content. It still remains critical. Content is king, context is queen, all these other things that we hear around content. But we've just talked about the metaverse, which entirely relies on content. We've talked about AI, which, again, needs content. It can also create its own content, but it still needs content to be able to do its research, create its context, etc. SEO is hungry for content. Social media is hungry for content. It's all still incredibly critical that we build content on a daily basis. As I say, use AI if you need to, but don't rely on it too much for now. On the same sort of theme, we're all hungry for content, but there are two very different types of content out there: short form and long form. I'm sure many of you use TikTok and watch Instagram Reels. Short form, easy to absorb. YouTube Shorts as well, content that can just quickly get you an answer to a question or entertain you or educate you in some way. Fantastic tools. So we need to be producing in marketing that short form content, more and more and more of it. And if you're not on TikTok, I would encourage it, especially within the retail space. It's obviously enormous. It's grown extremely well over the last couple of years. But it may not be as strong as perhaps Facebook in terms of driving sort of leads and sales, but in terms of driving brand experiences and pushing your content out to a large market, it's more successful than any of the other channels. It still goes back to what the other channels used to have at the beginning, which is genuinely trying to share organic content, which all the others have really shut down, minimalized their algorithms on pushing organic content because they want to push the ads because they want to make more money. So actually TikTok's a great place to be if you want to push your brand and gain your followers out there, but we'll come to that in a moment. But long form content is still important. Places where people have significant challenges, complex questions and problems to solve. It's important to have that in terms of copy and video. In an hour-long video on YouTube, I heard so many people say an hour-long video on YouTube is too long. No one's going to watch that. Well, there's 2 points on that. One, yes, they will if there's value in that hour. If the entire hour actually educates them and helps them and solves their problem, absolutely they will watch that full hour. Secondly, maybe they'll just skip to the 2 bits in that hour that they want. Great, fine. Okay, they're still engaged with your video. So long-form content, whether it's video, whether it's audio, whether it's written, is absolutely critical to your strategy. It's going to support every channel you've got out there, and SEO relies so much on long-form content. It's hungry for those keywords, those headlines, those subheadings that really educate people on what you need to talk about. So do keep focused on writing good, regular, long pieces, and as I say, transferring those into videos for YouTube channels, and looking at, well, actually, we'll come back to SEO in a moment. But yeah, it's all about value. The other point, the last point, humans like humans on here, is a point that applies to basically everything in marketing. The number of times I've seen over the years, exactly the same message, exactly the same ad, exactly the same format, exactly the same audience, perform 10 times better once you put a person in it, or you make that message come from a person, or you sign it off with a person's name. Even 25 years ago, right at the beginning of the internet, before YouTube, if you just signed your email as a person rather than a company, you always got a stronger response. If you sent it from Simon at rather than info at, you always got a better response. We, as humans, love humans. It's in our nature. Communities are the reason we still exist today. If we were trying to be lone hunters, we would have all been eaten by lions a long time ago. So keep people involved in your marketing, in your content. Try and, if you can do it yourself, if you're the face of the business, or you want to be the face of the business, or you want your staff to get involved in being the face of the business, do that. Make it human, really connect with people. Don't be too corporate, because ultimately people will not resonate as well with your content. I hope that makes sense. These buttons are a bit sticky, I think. Okay, social media. I don't really know why I went with 2 dogs and some balls. They're being social. All right? Yeah, okay. So Elon Musk, we mentioned. So obviously he's bought Twitter. Controversially, of course. I don't think he does anything that's not controversial. But it's been a bit of a roller coaster on Twitter over the last few months since he did buy it, the last 4 or 5 months, of course. We've had a lot of people leave, including big influencers and celebrities. On the other hand, we've had a lot of people come in. Some people just to sort of schadenfreude, just to kind of watch the disaster happening, but then they've ended up being sucked in and getting really engaged in Twitter. So they've actually done exactly what Elon Musk predicted, so he's not that stupid. Let's be honest, he's quite smart. So it is becoming quite active, but one of the dangers, of course, within the direction Twitter's going is Elon Musk is a big fan of free speech. Now, that sounds like a great thing, right? It's hard to criticize free speech. But, of course, the social media platforms were very much being held to account for allowing, potentially enabling hate speech, and people coming out with, of course, lies and racism and various other issues, and being able to get those messages out to hundreds of millions of people. So, I can't give you a fact on that. I can only let you make your own minds up about whether you think free speech is a good thing and giving everyone a voice is the right way forward, or is it actually just lazy and not trying to moderate the difficult work that you'd have to do. That's really for you guys to choose. But I think it is an interesting place to be. The numbers have gone down on Twitter, although it's privately held, and it's not possible to get that public information. From what I've seen on from the inside, the numbers have gone down, and they're expected to go down a bit more. But we are seeing a lot more activity and a lot more active users, people getting really, really involved. So those that are staying on the platform being a lot more active, however, a lot more people leaving the platform. So that's an interesting one to watch. Engagement levels, followers often declining at the moment, but strength from the communities that are remaining. TikTok, of course, we've already talked about, but yeah, I think that what I found with TikTok over the last 6 to 12 months is as I say, that there's an element of that that's old school. Let me just have a quick drink. In that you can still use hashtags ultimately to get out to a wider audience, and that's really great. That's really, really great. Yeah, ultimately the hashtags at the beginning, you're coming on from Twitter and then Instagram, and now LinkedIn, of course, as well over the years, have enabled you to get involved in certain subjects and topics, but ultimately the algorithms have pushed back on that and not really given you the opportunity. So you can still put a hashtag in and get no real exposure from it at all, because that's just not the way the social algorithms are directing the story. Whereas with TikTok, you can still do that. So you can still have good, relevant content and ride on the back of hashtags and get out to a very, very large audience. Of course, we've had our Eurovision win, first one in God knows how long, last year, right? From a TikTok star who was able to build a huge organic following. That's a very common story. So if you're not on TikTok thinking, okay, this is just for the kids, yeah, okay, about 65% is still very young, not necessarily children, but the younger generations, teens and 20s. But there's a good chunk of audience there that is 30s, 40s, 50s, who are looking for to-dos, who are looking for fashion advice, who are looking for cooking tips and DIY. There's a good chunk of the older audience, and that's only growing and growing and growing. And if you can get in front of that with organic content there, you're going to be more successful in many ways than you would be on Instagram doing the same thing, which is perhaps more of a traditional place to go for these. So I'm sure many of you are embracing it already, but for those that aren't, that perhaps a bit more cynical about it, and I know there's a few of them, not necessarily here, but certainly that I bump into regularly, I would strongly suggest you get in and have a look on that, because you can get some real cut through there. Audio content shouldn't be neglected. I think there were 250 million podcast users 5 years ago. There's now 500 million podcast listeners, I should say, now. So if you don't have a podcast going within your organization, or you're not jumping into podcasts and being interviewed to spread your sort of PR word, I would strongly recommend that as part of your strategy. If you can latch into some strong audiences, some great presenters and influencers who are running podcasts, it's actually really easy to get a podcast going now as well. And again, anyone who wants to do that, who maybe thinks there's a tech barrier or something, come and see me, and I'll give you a sort of 5 steps to get your podcast going. It's actually really, really easy. Obviously, it helps if you've got a bit of a following somewhere else that you can bring into the podcast to build it up. But the opportunity to build a podcast is enormous. You've also got live audio on the social media. You've also got live video as well. And of course, video is one thing that is still being optimized across the organic channels. So Instagram Reels will get you a lot more success than just Instagram posts. So those short video content that we talked about earlier, that is absolutely a place to be. But yeah, podcasts, I would recommend, if you don't have one, start one. If you don't want to start one, get yourself onto some podcasts, get yourself some interviews appear. It's a great, relatively easy, very low cost way to get yourself a significant amount more exposure. So have a look at that, and follow my podcast as well. I should throw that one in there. It's full of more riveting things like this. Influencers continuing to grow as well. I mean, that market has grown even more. I think if you rewind 5 or 6 years, we were down at about $1.7 billion being made by influencers around the world. That's a little over 16 billion as of 2022. So that is continuing to grow. And the interesting thing with influencers is they are going to be a core fundamental part of growing the metaverse as well. If we go back to talking about the creator economy, it's these guys that are going to be able to develop their own platforms and bring their followings on board and build immediate communities that are owned by them, where they own the data and they control the conversation. That's enormously powerful as we move into that experience world. These are the guys that are creating phenomenal experiences right now. And just a note to watch the splitters. Splitters is probably a bit of an unfair way of putting it, but Mastodon, Telegram, some of those that you may not otherwise have within your social media strategy are worth watching. Even Discord is interesting. Does anyone know who Discord is? No. Anyone? Yeah, okay, over there. Brilliant. All right. Does anyone, so I'm guessing I know the answer to this question. Does anyone have a brand strategy for Discord at the moment? Okay. All right, so we go back. This is interesting. I think it's interesting. You tell me. But if we go back to the sort of communities and the metaverse section again, Discord is a messaging app, ultimately, whilst you're gaming, right? So people play across different games, and then they have servers where you have sometimes thousands, hundreds of thousands of users on these servers, because you can't really, on many games and platforms, you can't communicate between an Xbox and a PC, even if you're on the same game a lot of the time. So Discord sits there and has grown to be a very significant organization because it enables people to voice chat or text chat whilst they're playing games, whatever they're doing. So really, really powerful platform in that sense. But it has communities, and anyone can create a community. So a brand could create a community. If you think there's a community of people who could get engaged, where you can share videos, imagery, links to things, you can have updates on what's going on with your products or shows, events, anything like that. You can create channels. If you know Slack, it's sort of relatively similar to that in that respect. You can create channels and experiences in there where you can bring your community and keep them alive together and engage questions and get research, and it's really, really powerful. So you can create your own communities, but also your brand, similar to what we just talked about with podcasts, your brand can go into other people's groups as well and potentially advertise. You need to check the rules of the server, but you may be able to advertise and have conversations with your target audience who are talking about specific things. They might be talking about travel, and you sell some travel clothes or walking boots, and perhaps you can get in there and get your products in front of people who are passionate about it. They're so passionate they've joined a specific Discord server to talk about it. I think it's an understated social media strategy. It's one that I think most brands don't think of, and I think from the response today, I think it's a fair comment. It's worth having a look at whether there is an opportunity for you to either have your own or get involved in other Discord communities. So yeah, take that one away as a little, hopefully a little thought-provoking one for today. Analytics. Took me ages to get the colors on that image right. I'm sure you're fascinated, but there we go, just so you know the work that goes into coloring a slide. Analytics, as I say, perhaps not the most exciting topic, and we'll only touch on this one very quickly. The reason it's here is because this year is when Google Analytics sunsets Universal Analytics, which is what it's called. It's Google Analytics tool for as long as I can remember, maybe 10, 15 years. But ultimately, their core Google Analytics that you would have been using for a long, long time is being shut down this summer in July, right? And it's moving to GA4, Google Analytics 4, which is actually a fundamentally very different platform, has different reports, different structure of data. You'd need to set up all your tagging, your buttons, your conversions, all these things. Now, it might sound incredibly dull and boring, but it's absolutely critical, because if you don't look at this now, you won't have any data after July, right? So if you're using Google Analytics, you need to, basically when you get back to the office or wherever you're going back to, you need to look at what your strategy is. You either need to, Google will move you to GA4, but it won't do your full setup for you. So you need to go and understand what GA4 is, how it's changing, what that means to your setup, or you need to go and look at another platform. There are plenty of others. There's Adobe, there's Matomo, there's lots of other analytics platforms you can switch to, but you've got to make a decision, have a plan for it now, because in, 6 months, your analytics is not going to function anymore otherwise, and then you've got a significant problem. So migrating is not that hard. Again, if you've got a challenge, if you're worried about that, and this is a first alert to you on it, come and talk to me, and I'll give you some tips on that afterwards as well. But yeah, that's what this slide is primarily about. Warning sign: if you didn't know this, get on it, because it's going to be a problem. I don't know whether you need your tech guys to do it, or you do it, or your agency to do it, or whatever it is. But key point there that need to address that this year. Come on, there we go. All right, Gen Z. Who's Gen Z? Who's Gen Z? 1, 2, 3, 4. Excellent. Okay, cool. Good. All right, actually quite a small number. So Gen Z is not yet the there's not a generation that's yet generally in the decision-making level of an organization. Generally, many of them are, but generally not. Not quite in the leadership of big organizations. Again, some are, but generally speaking, not generally the prime minister or the CEO of an Apple or something like that, right? But they all will be, right? The fact is, Gen Z is the fastest growing consumer group out there. Now, I'm sure many of you will be aware of this in the sector you work in. It's going to be something you'll keep an eye on. But I think the interesting thing with Gen Z is I don't think there's ever been a generation coming through that will fundamentally shift the way brands need to think and communicate more than Gen Z, right? Millennials, okay, we had to perhaps shift our messaging a little bit, perhaps try and be a bit more modern, a bit more tech-focused as brands. But Gen Z is effectively challenging us to be what we should be, which is ethical and good about what we do and do the right thing. The number of brands I've worked in or with over the years where within their values they've got do the right thing. Do they do the right thing? That's very questionable in my experience, maybe 25% of the time, right? So unless you define the right thing as making money, it's not always doing the right thing. And I think this is a really critical point, is that Gen Z simply do not tolerate it. 73% of Gen Zs are saying they only buy from brands that they believe in. They believe in, right? They believe the values. They trust you. They think what you're saying is true. You're being authentic. You're doing the right thing. 73% of Gen Z will only buy from those companies. That is huge. That is the power of the consumer, has the opportunity here to destroy businesses by simply not buying from them if they don't do as they say. That's enormous. That's never happened before. Right, not in my generation, certainly, not in the millennials either. So yeah, this is huge, and this is something that every brand needs to think about. No longer will things like, anyone know what I mean by the washing machine when I talk about ethics? Who's heard of greenwashing? yeah, or rainbow washing, or any of these others, right? You have to avoid the washing machine. The number of brands out there that will say what they think sounds like it's the right thing, and then absolutely not follow through on that. It's so transparent now. Every brand can be seen doing exactly what they're doing, and they can all be called out on social media very loudly and destroyed and cancelled in no time at all. I mean, if you look at Coke Life, I don't know how many of you remember Coke Life, but Coke Life came out, I don't know, 15 years ago or something, and disappeared quite soon afterwards, with an attempt to say, basically, you know, we're going to use natural ingredients, so it's not as unhealthy anymore. And of course, everyone out there, in terms of this is not greenwashing, this is really sort of health washing. I don't know what the phrase for that is, but pretending it was healthy, ultimately, is what they were saying with the message, and it just wasn't. It was still an incredibly sugary, fizzy drink that was incredibly unhealthy. So, you know, that is effectively washing, and they got caught for that. They got called out for that, and eventually the product got cancelled. That was before that's before Gen Z, really. That's before where we are today. So this is very, very serious, and I think every brand does not need to think about what should we say or what should our values be. They should be thinking genuinely, how do we operate? What do we actually do? Right? If we're going to do the right thing by the environment, let's look at everything we do. Let's look at our distribution. Let's look at our pricing. Let's look at our messaging. Let's look at our staff. Let's look at every single element of what we do around sustainability or again, around equal rights. And let's make sure we are actually following through. And if we're not, let's not say we are. Okay, you should be on that journey. Absolutely, you should be on that journey, but don't pretend to be on that journey. That's 100 times worse. So this is a really, really important point. If you're in a larger organization, especially, strongly encourage you to work on those values. This is work that I do with a lot of big companies all the time, is helping them think about what their values are and how they can authentically bring those to life. The small companies, even more so. You have the opportunity to genuinely disrupt and change things, as we've seen many businesses do in their organizations. So don't just think ethically. Don't just say you're ethically or ethical. I won't go on about it anymore, but that's a really, really important point for businesses to take forward and take very, very seriously over the coming years. I think we're on to pretty much the last slide now. So how are we doing for time? We got a little bit of time left, right? I think we're all right. Bit of a cheeky headline, sorry. But EAT within SEO. So search engine optimization has a number of elements to focus on. Constantly changing, algorithm updates all the time from Google. Who knows if we'll be talking about Google in 5 years based on what we said earlier. I think we probably will, but who knows. But there's a lot to focus on from an SEO perspective. This remains critically important. I hear a lot of businesses talking about, well, we'll do some advertising first, and then we'll have a little look at our website, and then maybe we'll do some SEO after that. It's not something you dip into in 6 months' time. It's something you need to get into early and build and focus, and it's incredibly complex. Scientific content plays a part, we've talked about, as do relationships, relationship building through link building, etc., PR. You know, there's a lot of different elements to SEO. One of those is EAT, expertise, authoritativeness, and trustworthiness. I really wish they'd make that easier to say. And this year, adding experience onto the end of it as well. So great, all sounds lovely and fluffy, but what does it really mean? Google doesn't focus on it that much. It's not a ranking factor, but what it is more of a principle about how you create content. And if you create your SEO strategy along the lines of these principles, you'll see some really strong success from what you do. So ultimately, it means ensuring that you are demonstrating trust. So have reviews and ratings on your website, as I'm sure many of you do for your company or your products. Make sure you've got an About Us and a Contact Us page so people can research you, find out about you. There's a genuine address there. Try to have content that's written by people who are an expert in their field. Perhaps people who are referenced or named on Wikipedia or have articles in the press. And therefore, when you have them writing content on your site, they're deemed an expert, and they're seen by Google within its network as an expert, and that creates a lot more expertise to your site as well, or build the expertise by having 2 or 3 key authors writing about the key elements of a subject. Make sure those subjects that are, make sure the pieces are lengthy. We talked about the content length earlier. Make sure they are lengthy. Make sure you're demonstrating that you know what you're talking about, right? Get the key points across in those articles. But also keep that content fresh. This is something that I think a lot of people forget, actually. Is that just because you've written a really great blog and it's 1,500 words and you've published it and it's been there for 3 months and it's doing really well, yay, hooray, 3 months later, that's going to decline. That's going to become less valuable. Google's going to say, well, you published that 6 months ago. That's not as relevant as someone who published something on the same subject last week. So less important. But if you can keep going in and refreshing that piece, you don't have to write a new one. Go in and refresh it, update it with new data, update the links, change the facts, refresh the key headlines, just refresh that content. So it's a really, really good technique that you need to be aware of. You don't have to just constantly be writing, although it's a good thing to do. You can also be splitting your time between half writing and half just refreshing stuff you've already written, and still continue to see really strong results off it. So I'd strongly recommend that if you've got a team working on content, they look at refreshing as well as writing. Because that frequency piece is important. We've talked about authors there as well. Links in SEO, everyone knows you need good authority links. It's not about the volume of links, it's about the quality of those links. 100 links from really good news sites is much better than 10,000 links from really terrible directories. So go out there and try and get those links and win those links and encourage them to link to your site. There's lots of ways to do that. But also linking out, again, is one of those things people forget. When we talk about expertise and authority, if you're referencing other sites that are clearly authorities in the space, that piece will be seen as a piece that is genuinely trying to inform the user of something important, not just trying to grab people onto your site. So don't be afraid to link out. I wouldn't recommend you link to competitors, just as a little tip, but don't be afraid to link out to other sources that give your piece more authority. And I think we've covered those pieces. So hopefully there's at least one or two things. I always like that everyone gets one or two things at least from today's presentation. Maybe some of you have got more, fingers crossed. If you need more, the little front cover there is my trends report, so you can go and grab that off my website or my company's website. We do all sorts of things, so go to sk.agency for the company and simonkingsnorth.com for me. FLM for the Love of Marketing is my podcast. Feel free to follow that. Mastering Marketing is my newsletter. So I think between all those things together, we've got about, 50,000 people following and listening. So feel free to come and get involved in all of those as well, and obviously connect with me on LinkedIn if you want to chat. I think we've got a few minutes left for some questions if anyone's got anything specific and not too complicated. If you've got something too complicated, come and see me afterwards. Otherwise, everyone else is going to get bored while I lecture you. But does anyone have a quick thing they want to chat about? Yeah, hi. Pretty much. Oh, there we go. Just in time.
Yes, say again. So I was
1 minute.
Yeah, I asked whether any type of business would be suitable for having a podcast or just a certain type that would be more effective.
I think my view is pretty much any type of business. There's perhaps a few that might be excluded. Like, for example, a logistics company might struggle to get enough people engaged, or someone with a real micro niche audience. But generally, most businesses can. It's all about targeting it to the right audience. I mean, for example, social media influencers. People always think when you say influencers, they think of celebrities who've got 1 million followers. Actually, an influencer can have 1,000 followers, and they just be a nano-influencer. So nano-influencer, micro-influencer, macro-influencer, celebrity is the sort of pyramid, ultimately. But it's the same with a podcast. If you've only got a few hundred followers to your podcast, but those are people who are absolutely focused on that subject, and they're very engaged, and they're getting value from it, that can be enormously valuable. So yeah, I absolutely think pretty much any business can have a podcast. And as I say, relatively easy. The key thing is not just to launch it and think you're suddenly going to have thousands of followers. You've obviously got to push it out there to your network and build it up and make some noise about it. But yeah, I think it's valuable for any business.
So just follow up a little bit. So we need to find out of the key value of our businesses before we do any podcast.
It's the same with anything in marketing. It's all about value. Know your audience, know who you're trying to speak to, make sure you understand them really well, and then consider how you can drive value for them. That's what it's all about. If you drive good value for them, you've got the opportunity to sell off the back of that. Don't create a podcast to sell to people, because people won't listen to it. Make sense? Good. Okay, well, if anyone's got any questions, I'll be over here. And thanks very much.